My name is John William Arnold Sr., and I'm at the home of J.T. Sandy Bartee at 752 Northwest Tarrant Avenue in Burleson, Texas. And today's date is Thursday, May 5th, 2005. Mr. Bartee, what is your date and place of birth?
Well, I was born July the 11th, 1925, in a little West Texas farming community known as Wingate.
Wingate.
However, I didn't live there very long. Before I was 1 year old, my family moved to an even smaller farming community called Shep. And my dad started farming my grandfather's farm there, and we lived there for a long time.
A long time.
Yeah.
I know where that is. All right. When you entered the service, were you drafted or did you enlist?
Well, that's a long story.
All right.
In the middle of my high school senior year, we had a pretty good football team, six-man football team. And we had tied for the district championship. And we were supposed to go have a playoff game. And our superintendent of our schools would not let us go because he said it was a war and we couldn't afford to use the tires on the buses and stuff like that. Well, a little later on in the year, I had one of the leads in the senior play. And of course, I lived 25 miles from where I went to school, and my family didn't have a car. And the superintendent, again, would not let us use a bus, so I missed out being in the play. They had to have a substitute for me. Just read it. By this time, I was beginning to get a little exaggerated. Of course, there was a big army camp in Aviation, and those guys would come out to Shep, maneuvers, and you'd be walking down the street in Shep or down the road in Shep, and they'd get on you about not being in the service and all this stuff. So finally, in December of 1942, my cousin and I went to Abilene about seeing joining. But when I got up there, they informed me that because I was only 17 years old, I'd have to have my parents' consent. So I had to come back home. I didn't have a birth certificate either. So I had to get people swear that I had been born and that they knew where I had been born.
Yeah.
I finally persuaded my mother and daddy to consent to have me join. Incidentally, my father was an artilleryman in World War I. And so on January the 2nd, I went back to Abilene and was sworn into the U.S. Navy.
Oh, now why did you join the Navy? Was that was your choice?
Yes. Well,
you selected the Navy.
Let me say that on my way to Abilene, my cousin went with me. He didn't join. I mean, wasn't planning on joining, but he went up there with me, and I was planning on joining the Air Force, but he sort of talked me into joining the Navy instead.
Okay. All right. Do you recall your first day in service?
Yes. Yes, I do.
And they want to know, what did it feel like?
After I was sworn in there in Abilene, they put me on a bus and sent me to Dallas, where they gathered people and they, together from all over the small town. And when I got off the bus there in Dallas and headed to where I was supposed to report in there, well, in Abilene they had given me a banner to put around my arm. It says, I am a Navy volunteer. Well, I started down the street to where I was supposed to report in, and out of a big bar there came a couple of women, about 3 sheets to the wind, and they started, "Oh, Navy volunteer!" And why don't you come over here and volunteer for us, and all this stuff, But I finally got to shuck them off and went over and checked in. But I remember that because them two liberated women.
Right. Okay. Tell about your boot camp experience. Where did you take your boot camp?
Well, in Abilene next day,
Abilene?
after I reported in, they put us aboard a train. All of them had gathered here from these smaller towns around,
Yeah.
and sent us to San Diego to go.
Oh, San Diego.
San Diego to boot camp, and they put us. Of course, that's where you lose all your hair and all your clothes and everything.
Right.
else. And they gave us an IQ test, and there was 200 men in our company, and out of that 200 men, 2 of us made high enough on the IQ test to be sent to officer training school. But when they started checking us out, I didn't have a high school education, so they wouldn't send me. But they said, well, Ben, you made this high grade on this test. We're going to let you have your choice of what branch of the Navy you want to serve in. So I said I wanted to be in the aviation branch. And so that after boot camp was over, they sent me to Norman, Oklahoma to go to Aviation Ordnanceman school.
Okay.
And I went after I finished school there, they said that the top 10% got to be a petty officer, which is the same thing as a sergeant in the Army. And the others got a first class seaman. And so somehow I managed to get that 10% and get my grade at that time.
Good deal. Do you remember your instructors?
Well, I remember my boot camp instructor. He was
Yeah.
big old fat. He was from. Well, we didn't have instructors. We had just had a
Yeah.
guy over our company.
Yeah.
He was a big old fat boy from somewhere in Texas. I forget where it was. I don't even remember his name. But
Okay. Okay. Which war were you in?
World War II.
World War II.
Yeah.
And where did you serve?
Well,
Where did you go?
well, let me
Okay.
bring me on down, because this is I've got a sort of deal here that I got to.
Okay.
I came after I finished the one in Norman,
Uh-huh.
the school in Norman. Well, Purcell, which is about 20 miles from there, had a gunnery school, and so I went over there and went through that gunnery school, and then we went to Norfolk, Virginia, to advanced ordnance school.
Okay.
Of course, I guess Norfolk has had a Navy there ever since John Paul Jones or before.
Yeah.
And that's when you saw the signs, no dogs or sailors allowed. You saw these on the yards around there.
Uh-huh.
But after that, got on a plane, and not on a plane, but on a train, and boy, this was a nice train. We had individual suites in there. There were 6 of us that was transferred to California. And we got on this, and we ate with the civilians, and dining rooms and
Yeah.
all that stuff. It was a real nice trip. We got into Chicago, and it was a big. And see, I was 17, but these other guys, they were 20, 25, or 30 years old. So we went into a bar, but they wouldn't let me up to the bar. I had to sit way over in the corner, and they'd bring me a Coke or something, and some guy, he was about half drunk. He come over and he wanted to adopt me. And anyway, he just kept arguing, talking. And
Yeah.
his son had got killed, and he wanted to adopt me. But anyway, we got back on the train, went to Port Hueneme, California. One good thing that happened there was that somehow or other my family got word or rumor that I was fixing to ship out. So my sister and my aunt and her son, which was the one that taught me to join the Navy, came out there and was going to spend a few days with me. Well, they got to spend one day, and the next day I got word that we were frozen. Couldn't get off the base,
Yeah.
which meant that we were just fixing to ship out.
All right, then where did you ship out to?
Well, we left Port Hueneme on a Liberty ship. Wasn't in a convoy, we were just one ship taken out. We went by ourselves, and we, what seemed like a eternity, we finally dropped anchor off the Russell Island. That's the wettest place on earth. Part of our cargo on that ship was going to be unloaded on the Russells. And so they just unloaded us for long enough to unload that cargo. And boy, it rained 3 times a day and twice at night.
Yeah.
And of course, we wasn't unloading our gear, so they just, all they did was put up a few tents for us to put our sea bags in, and then they issued us cots and mosquito nets. And at night, when we get ready to go to bed, we'd pull off our clothes, pull off of our boots, put our clothes on top of our boots, and climb into that cot with that mosquito net over us, and that's how we tried to sleep. Of course, it rained a couple of times that night, you know. That's the reason we'd pull off our clothes. But that thing, it was mud up to your ankles. It rained all the time on that thing. But we wasn't there about 3 days, and then we went on to a place, a little island a little farther up, the chain, Solomon chain, called Vela Novella. And boy, that was a nice island. I tell you, it was a beautiful island. And when we dropped anchor there, I thought, man, this is heaven. All them palm trees,
Yeah.
you know. And this was an island, Pappy Boyington. They were operating off of that. And we used to belt his ammunition for his corsairs, you know, to go to battle in. We'd belt them and then turn them over to the Marines, and they'd load them onto the planes. Because he was a Marine.
Okay, was that your job?
Well, that was for about 3 months, yeah.
And then what?
Well, then, word came down that the Marines had taken over Green Island. You know, they had to, and boy, Green Island, and that the CBs had moved in and they were building an air strip. Well, the Green Island, it was just a little old bitty place, just a little old atoll out there in the middle of the ocean, and didn't have any fresh water. Our baths, we went swimming in the ocean to take a bath,
Yeah.
and we'd catch rainwater on the corners of our tents so that we would have rainwater for to wash our clothes in. And I think they did distill some seawater. I guess the officers used it, and they used it to cook with. But anyway, but word came up that VPB 44, which was a Black Cat squadron, had been operating out of Espirito Santos, and they were slated to come up to Green Island and start operating there. So and they had lost some men, and about 6 or 7 of us was to be transferred from our present obligation and go over there and be our crewman for VP Guard Corps.
Okay.
But let me tell you about what Black Cats were.
Okay.
Not many people know
Good, all right.
what they are. When war broke out in 1941, the PBY, which was what the Black Cats were composed of, had already become obsolete. They would fly about 80, and cruise about 80 to 100 miles an hour. When it went into dive bombing, a bomb run, they could get up to about 120 to 150. Of course, they were going up against zero that flew 400 miles an hour. They didn't have a chance, you know. Now this is before I got over there,
Yeah.
but they didn't have a chance. And in fact, they'd go out on a mission, they'd lose half their planes. Well, by about mid-1942, all of the squadrons, all the way from the Philippines down to the Solomons, had been almost wiped out. The only ones left was a few squadrons right around, that operated right around Pearl Harbor. So the big wigs, they called a meeting. And they got a bunch of these squadron commanders in, and they got to analyzing what is happening. And then they realized at that time that the only successful missions that the planes had ever flown were at night. So out of this realization, they came up with a plan of operations that turned those planes into killers. What they did, they brought the planes in, painted them a big flat black all over.
Oh.
They put on arresters on, exhaust arresters on them where you couldn't see the flames at night. And the one that made it was that the British had developed an airborne radar. And the Japs didn't have it. So they installed those on those PBYs, which enabled them to see at night. And that's when they became the Black Kids.
Okay. That's good. How long were you overseas like that?
Overseas?
Yeah.
Well, I went in January of 1940, January 2nd, 1943. It was 31 months before I got home again.
Okay. And you was in a lot of combat.
P-44. And I remember the first mission that I ever flew for. There was a, well, let me back up a little bit. You know, Green Island was located halfway between Bougainville, which was occupied by the U.S., and Rabaul, which was Japanese big base in the South Pacific. It was to the Japanese, Rabaul was the same thing as Pearl Harbor was to the U.S. And they had ships and planes and troops. They had that thing. I mean, they had as much there as the U.S. had at Pearl Harbor. Yeah. But anyway, the first mission was a group of B-25s was going over to bomb one of the bases on Rabaul. And what we had to do, we had to fly out ahead of them, and our mission that night was to drop flares so that the B-25s could come in, you know, and bomb, could see what they was going to bomb that night. Most of the time they went in the day, but this was a night mission. Well, in my job, I was the youngest man in our plane,
Okay.
so I got all the dirty work, you know. So my job that night was to crawl back in the tunnel, back in the tunnel here, and there was a hatch back here. You opened up, and the flares were stored back there, and you'd pitch them and throw them out through the hatch, and you'd hold on to the rip cord, and it would open up the parachute, light the flares, and they'd float down in the, you know, and light up a wide area. You get a couple of planes doing that, and you had a whole airport lit up. But anyway, when I got back, hauled back in there, they had a safety belt back there that you put on, you know. Because when you open that hatch, you don't
Yeah.
start looking down. But when I put on the belt, started crawling back, it wasn't long enough. I couldn't reach the hatch. So, as I said, I was youngest
Yeah.
and didn't want to, look like a fool, so I just pulled the stupid thing off and crawled back there. I was out of belt load. And every time I'd throw a flyer out, it would jerk me forward, and I'd grab everything inside. Tried to keep from falling through that thing, but I made it.
Were you ever wounded?
No,
Okay. What was your most memorable experience? That?
no.
Okay.
Now, I'll tell these things, you think, well, they're happening all the time, but they didn't.
Okay.
Just every once,
Yeah, right.
most of the time our operations were trying to stop on little Japanese ships that were trying to supply them, supply the Japanese on these islands, different islands. We were trying to keep the supplies from reaching them. But anyway, I had about once we were flying, making a Dumbo run. I don't know what what a Dumbo was, but out there in the Pacific, there was a long way between islands a lot of times, hundreds of miles. And they'd bring these fighter planes over there and unload them, and then they'd have to get them up, further north. Well, they couldn't make it, they couldn't carry enough gas, so they'd have to strip them down, take all the guns, everything off of them, put them on, and then before they took off, we would take off what we call a double run. We'd take off about an hour before they did. And then they'd start coming, and so therefore we wouldn't be too far forward if there's something happened. Because we started an hour early, because they were a lot faster than we were, and they'd catch us and all that. But anyway, we were flying Dumbo this particular time, and the captain came on and said that, there's a bunch of B-25s that have made a raid on an airfield here, and one of them is in the water. He said, they tell us that we're the only ones close enough that'll be able to get them before the Japanese do. Says, I think we ought to go get them. And our captain was Mr. Black. And I said, and everybody on the plane hollered, yeah, let's go get them. So that's what we did. And so we went and made a run on them and flew over them, came back, landed on the water. And that ain't no little feat itself. But anyway, about the time we got them loaded, one of them was wounded. So I had to go over, I was still the youngest, so I had to go over and help try and get him back in our plane. And I think we picked up 5. There was 5 on that plane. We got them on our plane. By the time we got them on, there was a Jap destroyer started lobbing. It got close enough, started lobbing shells at us, so we just took off. And got back in the air. The planes had already passed us, the Dumbo fighters that we were Dumboing up north had already passed us. And but we landed in the we left these Air Force people off. I forget what the name of that other group was. Anyway, we got them off, and then we followed the fighter planes all the way up into the Philippines, and operated up there for about 3 months. Yeah. I would say, I guess that's about the more. One time it wasn't as near as exciting, but one time we were operating up on the Sepik River in New Guinea. And word came down, we operated up there for a while, and word came down that, well, we need to make a trip, pick up a guy here in Australia. And so we flew up to close to Darwin, up in the real north part of Australia, picked up a big old burly Australian and 6 natives. And he told us, well, he was going up north to be a coast watcher, because the Japanese ships had been coming down through the slot. The slot was, the Solomon Islands was, north-south, and that some of them would be on one side, some of them would be on the other, but there was a slot just right between them. And these Japanese ship would come down the slot. And he was going up there, to locate them to find them when they first started down the slot. Well, about on the way up, our Captain Black came on the phone and says, well, there's on the other side of the island from where we're going to land, there's a Jap garrison. So you waist gunners are going to have to take this, have to go up with this Australian, to be guards while they get all this gear set up and all this stuff, and we're going to come back a couple of days later to pick you up. So we landed, taxied up to the beach as close as we could, and got all of his gear on our lifeboats and went ashore, and we spent 2 days with that old boy up in those mountains, hills, and then came back and messed around there for a while and started up here. And then late that afternoon, here come this plane after dusk. See, the way the Black Cat squadrons operated, they had different squadrons all over sea, on different islands, maybe 100, 200 miles apart. Well, 1 month, your mission would be patrol, Maybe then you'd switch off and become a rescue. Your patrol would be rescue. And then you'd operate a month there, and then you switch off and you'd be what is hunt and destroy. That's when you go out and try to sink ships and stuff. Mm-hmm. So you operate in different methods, at different times, Yeah. And what you'd usually do, your mission would start at night. You'd sleep during the day, and your mission would start at night. Uh-huh. And you'd take off at dusk, and you might be gone 17, 18 hours before you come back. Because that plane could stay up that long.
Oh.
And then I remember once right after we turned green, after coming back from the Philippines, got back on green. We hadn't been there too long, and we had a mission that said there were still Japanese on Bougainville, up way up in the northern tip of Bougainville, even though you might say the Marines had taken Bougainville or Bougainville, or whatever how you say it. And word came down that they had started trying to recapture the island. So they loaded us up with a bunch of bombs and sent us over there. And sure enough, we caught them, a big bunch of them, as it's crossing a river. And we dropped 1,000-pound bombs and 500-pound bombs on them. And then fly back and forth with those 50 calibers, in case there was any stragglers.
Yeah.
See, here's the waist gunners are back here.
Yeah. Okay. Where were you when the war ended?
I was, uh, in 1942, that's not it. We had planes, VP Bartee had planes scattered all the way from Fiji, all the way up to the Philippines. But they get when, when our planes getting where they couldn't stay up in the air. We lost about half of them already.
Yeah.
Planes and personnel. And so that word came down that, well, we can't hardly meet. People were getting out by the thousands. Because soon as they had enough points, they could get out. If you remember that.
What date were you discharged?
Huh?
You remember the date you was discharged? Okay, good. No.
Anyway, they had points. Everybody was getting out and they let them go home, by the thousands. But I had points running out of my ears. But what I didn't know when I signed up on a kiddie cruise. There was no way I was going to get out until I got to be 21 years old. So I got discharged on July the 13th after I turned 21 years old on the 11th. Which everybody else has been going home for the long while.
1946.
21 and 25 is 46. Yeah.
Now, what do we want?
21 and 40.
Then, did you attend school after you got out? And
Yeah, as soon as I got out, I started going to my car. As you know, as I said before, I didn't finish high school, but I got enough points in the Navy to allow me for going to school in the Navy, to allow me to start college. So I started college as soon as not very long after I got out, and finished my 4 years and 3 years. I didn't have much time left, so I just finished it.
And you were a certified public accountant, right?
Yes. Eventually.
That's what you did?
Eventually, yes. I started I graduated in July of 49. I graduated in 1949. And on July 30th, my wife and I got married. We moved to San Angelo. And I started working for a CPA firm there.
Okay.
That's,
And your family? You got 2 children?
I got 3 children.
3? Okay.
Yes, and 1, 2, 3 grandchildren.
Oh boy, that's great.
No, 2 grandchildren and 2 great grandchildren.
Do you keep up with any of the members of your old unit?
No.
Do you belong to any veterans organization?
No, we don't have a VFW here in Burleson, and I don't care for what they call them,
American
the
Legion?
American Legion. Yeah.
Right, I understand. Okay.
As I said, we were living in San Angelo when I got a letter from Uncle Sam. He says, report to Abilene for physical, and possibility of being called back into the Navy. Well, I told my wife, I said, well, I'll go up there, and even if I pass my physical, how the Navy operates, it's going to be 30 days before they do anything to me. So I got up there and passed my physical, and 2 days later I called my wife from Bremerton, Washington. Didn't you, And then we'd been assigned to bring the USS CV-9 out of mothballs, and to take it to Korea, to fight the Koreans. Well, my wife came up and we had about 3 months before we go overseas, because I had to shake down that CV-9. She got a job up there working for the American Red Cross. And there was 4 guys had gone up there with me from Texas, right around one from Waco, and one from Dallas, and one from somewhere else. And where there's 4 of us went up there. And of course, Margie and I made it real good, because she had a good job and working for Red Cross, and I had a little. But these other guys, their wives, I don't know, they didn't work. And they borrowed money from us. And not only that, we had to burn coal, and they'd come down at night. Some of them, 1 or 2 of them, come down at night. We got to have some coal. We were freezing to death. They didn't have no money to buy coal. They really had it rough, but we had it pretty good.
Yeah.
But anyway, we took it overseas. Took CV-9, took it to Korea, and we'd operate off the coast of Korea and sit in planes one right after the other. I mean, strikes, you know. The only thing that really happened during that time was that I applied for a commission again, because I had my, and I passed the exam again, and I passed the face-to-face exam, and they said, and then it was recommended that I be granted the commission as an ensign, provided I would extend my enlistment for 2 more years. Well, it wasn't but about 6 months before my enlistment was up, and I said, no, thank you, I'm getting out. And so I let them have it. You know. But I did spend about a year and a half during the Korean War.
How long have you been in Burleson?
Well, 1972.
All right. All right, we'll see your, which one is that?
That photo was when I was called back into the Navy during the Korean War. Well, that was made when I was in boot camp in San Diego in 1943.
You was a young man there, weren't you?
Yeah, I was 17 years old.
My word.
Those ribbons are, you know, the Asiatic. And you see, if you notice, they've got
Yes.
stars in them.
Right.
Each star represents a major campaign that I
Right.
was in.
Okay.
There's 2 in the Asiatic Pacific campaign ribbon, 1 in the Philippine ribbon. The Air Cuban wings, you see that?
Yes.
It's got 3 stars in it, and they mean that I engaged the enemy, at least our crew engaged the enemy on the air, on sea, and on the land.
All right.
Oh, that's just the Korean Freedom Medal.
I know you got a good conduct medal and a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, that's up there, that ribbon.
Yeah. All right, there's Mr. Bartee's honorable discharge from World War II. Is there anything else you want to show us?
I'm ready to know, huh?
That's about it?
I've got
Okay.
some ribbons. I bought my ribbons. I had to buy my ribbons again when I went back in the Korean War.
I
And
see.
any I earned after that, I didn't even mess with.
I don't blame you. Anyway, thank you very much
Yeah.
for your time, and we appreciate your service to the country. And this will go to the Library of Congress.
Well, we appreciate it.
ASAP.
I appreciate your time in coming over here and doing this.
All right.